carry on with their day. So I just want to thank you all for coming. Welcome everybody to our second program in this series, Our Power, Our Planet. And today we're going to cover why municipalities are investing in clean energy. And so we've invited Clean Energy New Hampshire to talk to us about some recent success stories. And hold on one second. So for those of you who are not aware, my name is Barbara Richter. I'm the Executive Director at the New Hampshire Association of Conservation Commissions. And NHACC is a nonprofit organization working to support conservation commissions so that they can be successful in protecting their local natural resources. And we chose today's topic to reflect the International Earth Day theme of Our Power, Our Planet. And to celebrate Earth Day, NHACC is presenting this webinar series to help commissions learn more about how renewable energy helps to protect our planet and our local fragile natural resources. Hold on one second. I'm just going to admit everybody here. So NHACC worked with a planning committee of conservation commissioners to develop these programs to engage more people and build up excitement for the final Earth Day celebration on April 22nd, 2025. So this series is focused on providing new ideas, information, and resources for commission members and their town officials who want to support environmental protection by promoting renewable energy as a way to preserve and protect our environment. So we certainly believe there's a strong connection between clean energy and environmental protection. So NHACC is partnering with Clean Energy New Hampshire on these first two programs. So I'd like to welcome our speaker today, Sarah Brock from Clean Energy New Hampshire. Sarah Brock joined Clean Energy New Hampshire as director of the Energy Circuit Rider program in 2024. Sarah works with a team of energy circuit riders to help municipalities and small businesses plan, finance, and implement clean energy and energy efficiency projects. Prior to joining Clean Energy New Hampshire, Sarah spent more than a decade implementing community-based climate, energy, and transportation programs at Vital Communities, a nonprofit supporting the Upper Valley region. So just a few quick items before we begin. Just a reminder, this program is being recorded, and we will send out the recording of the program tomorrow. So feel free to share that with other commission members or other community members who might be interested in this program. We do ask everybody to remain muted to ensure good audio quality for everybody. And from what I can tell, it looks like you've already muted, so thank you. We are going to invite you to ask questions today. It can be helpful to use the chat box at the bottom of your screen to type in questions so you don't forget them as we go along. And I'll be monitoring that chat box, and so we'll be able to ask questions at the end of the program, or maybe we can slip in a few as we go. And at the end of the program, you're also welcome to raise your hand. There's the raise your hand feature at the bottom as well under reactions. So now I would like to welcome Sarah to the program and to talk more about the municipal clean energy projects that she's working with. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Barb. Good to see everyone or see your names on black screens. Thank you for being here. I'd love to know where you all are coming from. So while I tell you who I am, if you would just type in the chat the town that you reside in, that would be amazing. It'll help me get a sense of who you are. I am Sarah Brock, as Barbara mentioned. I lead the Circuit Rider program here at Clean Energy New Hampshire. And if you're not familiar with us, we're 21 years old now. We're a nonprofit. We have an office in Concord, but we've got staff based across the state. And thank you for throwing your towns in the chat. We have a couple different things that we do. We do a whole lot here in Concord and across the state with respect to energy policy. There was a talk a couple of weeks ago with our executive director, Sam Evans-Brown, that I believe was recorded. So if you're curious to know a bit about the clean energy landscape in New Hampshire and how we are working to make sure that our public policies around clean energy and resources around clean energy make it possible for all of you to develop beneficial clean energy in your communities, you should watch that talk. We also do a lot of education and outreach and technical support for clean energy projects. And by clean energy projects, I mean electrification, energy efficiency and renewable energy generation primarily. Thanks, Barb. Yes, please do send a recording of Sam's program tomorrow with this one. I mentioned that I am part of a team of energy circuit riders. I'll tell you a little bit more about what we do later in the presentation, but the long and the short is that we provide very specific technical assistance, which means we go out and we meet with you and we talk you through it for municipalities and businesses, mainly to help take on energy projects. And I'll talk you through some of the kinds of projects that we work on and that we see in a little bit. But we have teams that are designated in specific regions. So I've got 4 circuit riders. I believe 2 of them are here today, Frank and Melissa, from our North Country and our Monadnock regions. These are folks who live in those communities, work out of their home offices, and serve those municipalities and help communities in those regions to take on energy projects. We also have a couple of statewide circuit riders who focus on helping small businesses tackle clean energy projects, and I'll share a little bit about that later too. So before I go on, I would love for us to do a bit of humor me interaction. I'm curious to know, thank you for telling me where you all are from. I'm scanning through the list here. At the bottom of your Zoom screen, you'll see a little heart in the word react. Underneath it, I'm going to ask you 2 questions and I want you to give me an emoji to help me know if we were sitting in the room, I would ask you to raise your hand. The first question is whether you know that your town has an energy committee or an energy commission. And if you do think you know that, would you go into the reactions and give me a thumbs up? It's a test of your technical skill. All right, I'm seeing some thumbs. And if you don't know if you have an energy commission, you can give me a laughing emoji if you wish. Great. Okay, so I'm seeing some. And then I'm curious for your second attempt, if you can think of a project that happened at your municipality related to clean energy. Maybe there's solar panels on your town hall, or maybe you heard about them doing an energy audit at the library. If you're aware of something that has happened from your municipal government with respect to clean energy, share some sort of emoji, a heart, a celebratory thing. Okay, I'm seeing a few. Great. So for some of you, hopefully what I'll be showing today is going to sound familiar because you've seen it happen in your own community. What we're going to be talking through is first the basics to make sure we're all on the same page. What is an energy committee? Presumably you're here today because you're very familiar with what conservation commissions do in communities across the state. I work with a lot of energy committees and energy commissions, so I'll help you understand what those bodies do. We'll also talk about the kinds of energy projects that might happen in a town. My team has a lot of experience working with many kinds of towns and cities on many kinds of projects. I'll give you a taste of that. We'll also talk through what it takes for communities to develop an energy project, and I'm specifically thinking about municipal energy projects, although I'm happy to talk about public outreach and more general campaign type projects as well. And then finally, I'll make sure you understand who we are at Clean Energy New Hampshire and what my team can do to help you in your community if this is something you would like to learn more about and get more involved in. And then I do think we'll have time at the end for questions and discussion. And I would say hold most of your questions for the end, but if you have something urgent or burning or particularly relevant to what I'm talking about, feel free to throw it in the chat and I'll try to address those as they come. Okay. So let's get started. And I'm just checking to make sure. Wonderful. That there weren't any questions in the chat. So first, what is an energy committee? There are a couple of common structures that we see for what I am calling as a blanket term energy committee. There's an energy committee, which is a sort of unofficial term for any group of people who are getting together to work on energy related projects in the town. There's something more formal called an energy commission that's actually designated in New Hampshire law. There is a document here that'll be linked in the slides, of course. You can also find it by using this QR code if you can't wait, that explains the difference between committee and a commission. But in effect, the commission has got some pretty clear statutory requirements for what it must do, and the languages that the commission, sorry, I'm getting my words confused, that the commission shall be responsible for tracking energy use at the municipality, making sure that that is communicated to town officials, and that they are involved in matters relating to energy use in the town. And there's more detail in this resource if you're curious. An energy commission can also have a budget within the town budget and be responsible for curating that budget and you know, processing those funds. The expenditures of those funds still have to be approved by the governing body, but an energy commission could actually have a budget where a committee could not. And happy to talk more about that later. What we tend to see in working with energy committees and commissions in New Hampshire is that there are two buckets of work that they tend to take on. One is related to reducing municipal energy use and energy cost. And for some communities, reducing carbon emissions is also a big part of that work as in terms of why they're interested in prioritizing this. The other bucket of work that I see energy committees take on relates to providing resources for residents. So that's not municipal energy use, but that is energy use in the community writ large. So to give you a little bit more of a sense of what it looks like for an energy committee in a town or city to address municipal energy use. Typically, these groups start by getting familiar with the energy bills of the municipality or the city or the town. So you're looking at electric bills and heating bills, and you're trying to get a sense of how energy is used in our community. When you start digging into that, you start noticing where the big issue areas are, where the really big bills are, where the leaky buildings are, and you start to scope out what kinds of projects could be done to try to improve that. And again, you're looking to reduce cost. If you're interested in the clean energy component, you're looking to reduce reliance on carbon intensive fuels, and you're looking to reduce energy use overall through efficiency. These groups tend to be thinking in it with a couple different lenses. One is what projects are high priority. Maybe the select board or the voters or the governing body are particularly concerned about a particular building and asking you to go and identify projects that could be done. Maybe there's an impending grant opportunity. There was a grant opportunity in this past year to help towns put small scale solar at community facilities. And so we had a lot of communities turning around in pretty quick order to try to put together solar projects. And that would be an example of a high priority project that you might scope out. Another lens would be looking out to the future. A lot of the committees that we work with are familiar with their towns. What am I thinking of? Property improvement plans. So, you know, equipment replacement plans. Most communities have schedules for when they replace big pieces of equipment, boilers, vehicles, buildings, and it would be in the energy committee's purview to know what that schedule is and to be planning ahead for making sure that when those purchases need to be made, that energy efficiency and you know, maintenance and operational cost is being considered appropriately. And then the final piece is related to that. It's what our team calls shovel ready, particularly over the last few years as there's been a lot of grant funding available for communities to take on energy projects. Those grants would appear and there would be a pretty quick turnaround to put together a project and apply for those funds. So we have advised communities over the past few years, and this continues to be relevant, to make sure that you have a healthy backlog of high priority projects that you're not ready to take on now, but you know what they would be. Every town should know what the best site for solar would be, what the biggest need for energy efficiency improvements is, what the next likely failure is going to be in terms of heating and ventilation in municipal buildings, so that you're ready with a plan when the time comes to take action. Another role of the committees is to look out for project funding. That might mean grants, that might mean financing, that might mean other mechanisms, but it would often be the purview of the committee to do that research and come back to the town or the city with, here are your options. This is a high priority project for this region. This is, you know, the time constraint and why we think it needs to happen now or why it might happen later. Here are the options that we found for how we might fund this. How would you like to proceed? And then finally, there's a manner of project management. that a volunteer committee can do to help make sure these projects succeed. And that happens throughout the course of the project, from scoping it to interacting with contractors, overseeing whatever RFPs, requests for proposals, might be necessary to procure supplies or contractors and make sure that the project is completed in a timely fashion. It also means being very involved in educating voters who ultimately have to approve many of these projects. So that was a very, oh no, my screen is not up.
Yeah, sorry, I was just about I didn't want to interrupt you. You were on such a good flow there. So
Interrupted me, Barb.
sorry, I was trying to interrupt via chat, and then other people were like, "We're not seeing our screen." So
No
yeah,
worries. Thank you.
sorry.
Let me try that again.
Go ahead and share.
This one, I've hit share. Here we go. Here, I'll give you a little thing. And next time, please interrupt me. You all are way too polite. Okay. I'll give you a moment, and you'll get these by email, but you know you won't open that. This is a bit about who we are. Here are the regions that we work in. Hopefully this is helping you catch up to all of what you were just missing. Our agenda. There's a resource here that you'll be able to access later. And there's this is what I was just talking through, some of the examples of what an energy committee might do. There is a resource linked here that you can access later that this here that goes through one tool for helping to ensure that you're able to fund these projects, which is establishing a capital reserve fund for energy projects. This is something we're seeing an increasing number of towns do, and we've got some guidance and some examples about how to do that. So the other way that energy committees operate in communities, not all, but some, is to provide resources and education for residents and I suppose by extension businesses in the community around what they can be doing to reduce energy costs and reduce their carbon footprint. Some examples of the sorts of things we see in New Hampshire include workshops. That could be anything related to energy. We've seen committees host workshops about heat pumps and about energy efficiency and about how to put solar on your house. There is a workshop series called Button Up, which has been offered for many years through New Hampshire Saves that many communities take advantage of. And there's a link here to sign up for those free workshops, and they will bring that to your community. We have some communities, then there's an example here from Deerfield that hosts what they call expos, which is a fairly large half-day or more event with maybe some workshops, tables, people come with their electric vehicles. They can be a big thing. They're often a regional collaboration among multiple towns, but there are energy expos every year scattered across New Hampshire, organized entirely by local volunteer groups, often local energy committees. Info sessions about existing programs, that's something we see a good deal of as well. There are some upcoming programs that while they are federally funded and so caught up in some of the federal funding pauses happening right now, we do expect will probably still come to New Hampshire in the next year or two. And these would be programs that would provide rebates to residents for installation of heat pumps and other high efficiency electric appliances, more accessibility of energy efficiency. And as the programs like this roll out, there is certainly a role for local energy committees in making sure that residents in their towns are aware of these programs. So when those sorts of programs hit, we tend to reach out to energy committees and encourage them to host about it, host an informational session, and that sort of thing. We also see communities host campaigns. These are somewhat longer term in that they're more than just a single event, but a campaign might involve, for example, a Solarize campaign involves a big kickoff event, a relationship with one or more solar installers where they're often providing some sort of discount for residents within a particular time frame who are willing to sign contracts to go solar. And then you count up the number of homes that participated at the end and you have a big party. We've seen communities do that for solar. We've seen them do it for weatherization, and we're increasingly seeing other creative community campaigns in communities across the state. There's also an organization called Window Dressers that runs community builds and sells volunteer-built window inserts that are very effective, and then donates some of those to low-income neighbors, and that has been something that's come to New Hampshire in recent years. The next example here is coaching programs. There's a very interesting pilot right now in Peterborough, New Hampshire, where they've got a group of volunteers signed up to coach their peers on various topics. For example, someone who has installed heat pumps in their own home might be willing to sit down with a neighbor who's considering installing a heat pump and just wants to ask some questions about what it was like. We also have some of those volunteers who have gone through more formal training to be able to provide advice somewhat beyond their own personal experience. That program just launched, but I think it's really interesting and promising, and I'm sure other communities may follow suit. And then finally, some of our energy committees have web pages that they try to maintain with resources for their residents related to programs and opportunities to save energy or invest in renewable energy. And that's certainly great as well. So let's get into the kinds of projects that we have seen across the state in recent years. And I'll start with the municipal level. So I mentioned that Clean Energy New Hampshire has a team of circuit riders and that we provide technical assistance to municipalities. We are currently tracking and supporting over 200 projects in just shy of 100 towns across the state. So massive portfolio. We sort of are split in between about a third of those projects we're very heavily involved in. About a third of those projects we have a moderate touch in, and about a third of those projects we have a very sort of light touch in. We maybe provide a resource here or there, but mostly that's led by the community themselves. The kinds of projects that we're seeing, I just gave you a chart so you can see the breakdown of what we see across the state. A lot of solar, and mostly that is solar on the roof of a town hall scale solar. But we are seeing communities who are developing large, multiple acres of solar to serve their entire municipal energy load and everything in between. We also see a lot of energy efficiency. For many years, that was a lot of communities going through lighting retrofits. And if your community has not ever had an assessment of your lighting and talk to a company that could replace your lighting with all LED lighting, if you haven't done that, it's a very, very cost-effective step. But this category also includes getting an energy audit through NH Saves, which can provide a free or very low-cost energy audit depending on what utility you're in, and that can give you a really good whole building sense of how that building is performing and what sorts of improvements, whether they be insulation or mechanical or otherwise, would be needed to reduce the energy burden of that facility and reduce the amount of fuel that you're expending, mainly heating, but also electricity. Electric vehicles is another that we are seeing a lot of, and when I talk about electric vehicles, it's split. There's a number of communities that are actively looking at sites for electric vehicle charging, and many of those communities see that as an economic development investment. There is a report that Clean Energy New Hampshire and Ski New Hampshire collaborated on that was released at the end of last year, really digging into the likely impact of delaying or accelerating our electric vehicle charging infrastructure in the state, and the impact of that on our tourism industry. It's fascinating, but that is driving a lot of the interest we're seeing in communities looking into this. We also have a number of communities that are actively looking into or have already invested in an electric vehicle as part of their fleet. So a police cruiser, a DPW truck. We are even starting to work with some public works departments on heavy duty electric equipment. That's a little bit newer, but my colleague Katrina, who's not here today on the seacoast, is working with several towns looking at electric dump trucks, electric skid steers, and those sorts of things. So that's coming. Policy is a category that we track, and for us, most of the projects that fall in this category are communities that are updating their solar zoning ordinances, for example, communities that are putting in place capital reserve funds to regularly set aside money to then be able to invest in clean energy projects that can then save the town money. HVAC stands for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. that is the big heating equipment and some of your larger public works or town halls, etc. We certainly have communities who are very specifically looking at dating, replacing, maybe strategically installing heat pumps in some of their office spaces. Construction, I mentioned earlier that one of the things that energy committees really ought to be doing is paying attention to the plans in town to build new buildings, whether it's an addition on the library or a new town hall or fire station or a new school. Really important to have energy committee members in those processes really early on, because there's a lot you can do in planning for new construction or renovation to incorporate energy efficiency in cost-effective ways if you are thinking about it early enough. And not just energy efficiency, but renewable energy generation as well. And we do have communities that are very thoughtfully and proactively building buildings to be what we call net zero, which means they are designed to have very minimal operating cost. Energy storage is another that we are seeing more of. We at Clean Energy New Hampshire partnered with Eversource this past year to identify some funding to help what we believe are the first battery energy storage projects in a municipal setting in the state. The projects that we're currently working on are at emergency shelters, the concept being that these are communities that are familiar with losing power, that need places for residents to go, and that have had issues or not, but we have many communities that told us they have had issues with their diesel generators and are looking for another layer of security to ensure resilience in times of emergency. So we've got several batteries going to vote at town meeting this next month. I suppose it's not March yet. I'll let you know how those go. And then I mentioned all the things that towns can do to do outreach. We are only tracking 2 of those projects in our pipeline because our team really focuses on the built infrastructure side of municipal projects, but there are many, many, many communities across the state that are doing public outreach as part of their energy committee work. And the final is wind. We only have one community that we're talking to about wind, and it's only because they already have very large, well, all wind projects are large, but they have a wind farm located on their town property, and it's for a renewal of their contract terms. And so they're talking to us about that. We have a lot of projects in the pipeline and not a lot of completed projects by comparison. Our team has been active since 2019, but that was only in the North Country, and it's only been in the last year that we've expanded to be the team of 7 that we are now. So, and as you will discover when I talk you through what it takes to do these projects, it can take years to go from concept to construction on any one of the projects you see here. Part of that is because most of these projects will have to go through town meeting, and town meeting happens once a year. You're kind of stuck with that. Most of the communities we work with are towns, and so they can't go through a city council. And then so if you consider that many of these projects were started within the last 18 months, it's not surprising that we have only 53 projects completed. But those 53 projects completed that we have supported are represent a significant investment and a lot of annual savings for those communities. This will be available to you. I pulled some examples of some of the projects we've seen over the last year. We've got folks working with landlords in Lebanon. In Bow, last year they approved and are now just in the complicated process of figuring out how to get it built, over 6 megawatts of solar, which is sort of the biggest combined project to ever be approved in the state. Dublin was looking at solar at their capped landfill. That was a fun project over the last year because there were a couple of times where the Conservation Commission and the Energy Commission needed to be working together to talk about that project and what that might look like. We've had some projects with schools where we've had school districts trying to collaborate to go after grant funding. That particular example on the screen here was not successful, which was a bummer, but it was great to see those districts collaborating in hopes of addressing energy efficiency together. And I mentioned electric vehicles and fleets. We've got a couple of towns on the seacoast that are just waiting for the electric police-ready Chevy Blazer to come out and be ready to purchase, and they'll be deploying those in their fleets this year. Municipal energy projects run the gamut in terms of complexity and what it takes to lift them. And when we coach energy committees, we often try to help them understand what is low-hanging fruit and what are these bigger lifts are, and help them make sure that they're not biting off more than they can chew, and getting some strong early wins to support the kind of political capital and goodwill that you will need from your voters and your town leaders to take on a very large solar or other complicated project. So briefly, I'll explain the typical process for getting these projects through if you've never been part of this. Typically, what happens is you identify, for any manner of reasons, a location and a scope of the project and why you think that this is something you want to look into. You've got to make sure you've got the okay from town leadership to chase this down and get information about what it would actually cost and propose something to the community. Once you've got the okay from town leaders to go chasing this down, there's a whole lot of work involved. Towns have different procurement policies, but it's not uncommon that you've got to go through a formal request for proposals and get multiple bids. And there's usually rules about how you go about selecting the winning bid. And you've got to then put together a funding plan. And if there's a grant involved, you've got to write the grant and sort of patchwork together how you're going to pitch to voters that you're going to fund this. And then if you get to the point where you've got a project and you've got a way you're going to fund it and you need to bring it to voters to have a vote, you've got to go through the warrant article process, and you've got to do all the voter education and select board education through typically the fall and into the spring to get ready for that town vote. And then assuming the voters give you the green light, then there's a whole back end side of the process to get that project constructed, because these can be, complicated construction projects. So you're coordinating with town staff and the installers and the utilities, but obviously very rewarding when the project gets built. And of course, this whole process can take years to complete. There is a very helpful guide that you'll have as a resource here. We call it, Are You Ready for Town Meeting? But it lays out all of the nuance and the steps of if you've got a project, what you need to take it through that formal decision-making process and get it ready to implement. Okay, getting to the tail end of my remarks, and I will remind you that while I am the talking head at the moment, there's a couple of my team here who are more frequently on the ground supporting these projects and can give you more detailed color about what it's like to do this kind of work. So we provide, as the circuit rider team, direct hands-on assistance to plan and finance and implement energy projects. And we do just about everything. And if we don't know how to do it, we can connect you with someone who does. I showed this map earlier. We have got staff located in the North Country, the Seacoast, and in Sullivan and Cheshire counties. I'm located in Concord, and as far as a municipal team, we do our best to support communities that are not in those regions. It's just may not be as consistent. So any of you anywhere in the state who have a question about an energy project or are trying to start an energy committee or are stuck on something, you should reach out. We respond and we do our best to help, and capacity allowing, we may be able to provide a good deal of help. We also have a team of small business energy circuit riders that do provide statewide assistance, and that is mostly to small businesses, which of course most of our businesses in New Hampshire would be considered small businesses. But if you have business yourself, or you have local businesses in your community who are whispering about wanting to address their energy issues, we are happy to be a first stop for that. Kinds of things that our team can help with. We help communities with project identification and prioritization. So happy to come in and do a consult and help you understand what you might tackle. We have got a growing bank of how-to guides and examples that we can share. Makes it easier to start from scratch if you've never done this before. We advise about how to put funding plans together and how to go about grant writing. We maintain a grant tracker where we try to keep track of all of the funding sources we're aware of that communities could take advantage of to do projects. Sometimes there's a lot, sometimes there's not a lot, but we're happy to orient you to what we're aware of. We have lots of samples and templates. For example, I mentioned that many communities will require a request for proposals and formal bid process. We've got lots of examples and templates for what that looks like, and so you don't have to start from scratch. We've got contractor lists, and we can help you find qualified contractors, usually, if you've got something in mind. We have got a lot of examples of warrant articles that have been successful in other communities, and tips for how to go about that. We are certainly experienced with what it takes to do good community engagement to educate voters and make sure these projects are successful, and are happy to advise on that. And then, as I mentioned, we answer the phone as best we can, and we answer emails. So if you've got questions or things you're stuck on, we like to be the team that can get you unstuck. We're a large team in that we're 7, but we are trying to cover 300 towns. So we try to meet you where you are and get you unstuck and send you on your way, but we're always happy to try and help. And I mentioned that we've got this small business team. I thought I'd throw this up for you. This team has only been running for a year, but we're currently working in 31 towns across the state, 42 projects that we're tracking in some way, shape, or form. And our small business team is mostly funded through a USDA grant that allows us to help identify for businesses whether they may be eligible to get what's called a Rural Energy for America program grant, which can cover, well, recently it had been up to 50%. It may now be going back to 25% of project costs. That's still significant for small businesses who are trying to invest in lower energy bills. So we're happy to chat with any business, help them understand whether this particular program could be helpful to them, and then also help them understand what else they might do if the REAP program is not a good fit for them. And here's just I think I put this together 8 months ago, but just to give you a flavor of the kinds of businesses we've worked with. They really run the gamut. And businesses also for us includes farms. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that for now. I would love to know what you feel like I breezed way too fast through, because I am a fast talker, and I would love to know if there are particular things you'd love to hear more about, because we do have some of our circuit riders here today who can talk you through what it's like for them.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah. That was a great overview of what you're doing there at Clean Energy New Hampshire. So we do have a few questions that I can read off. And again, if anybody wants to raise their hand, you can do that at this time too. But let's start with questions from the chat. Are there experts that do independent energy audits on schools? I believe our town is looking to replace the heating ventilation system, but perhaps just relying on a vendor to make a recommendation. So who would you recommend for an independent energy audit?
Well, we typically recommend, actually, Melissa, go for it. Melissa, just
So we do have a list of auditors that we can send you to contact to get quotes. It is very different than a residential audit, so you're absolutely right to look for somebody who has experience doing schools or larger buildings. But you could also, if you have Eversource, you could get in touch with Eversource and request an energy audit through Eversource. And if that is the case, Eversource, if you do have Eversource, they will connect you with one of their verified auditors who works in your region. So you have some options.
And if you're not Eversource, you would just contact whoever your electric utility is. All of the electric utilities participate in the NH Saves program. They each have staff within them that is the NH Saves team, and there's someone at your electric utility, unless you're a municipal utility, who's got a job title to look at the commercial and industrial, this is what they call this bucket, energy efficiency programs, and you would be part of that, and they would be able to explain exactly what they can do for you in terms of subsidizing an energy audit and supporting the cost of energy efficiency improvements. And if you don't know who to contact at your utility, you can reach out to us and we can connect you.
Oh, excellent. Thanks for that information. And here's one about level 3 chargers. How do municipalities afford level 3 chargers needed for police vehicles, or I imagine any town vehicles?
That's a great question. I think, and Linda, I'm seeing it's you who's writing this. I'll make a note. I don't know the answer to that. I can tell you that Katrin Casper, who's our Seacoast Circuit Rider, has been most intimately involved with the communities that are farthest along in putting police chargers in, and I'm sure that we could get back to you with an answer on that. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, sounds good. All right, conservation commissions are responsible for the protection and conservation of critically important land and watersheds. Why is focusing on clean energy projects beneficial to this mission, to protecting and conserving our fragile landscapes? Sometimes we need to provide our community members with a rationale so they better understand our work. So, Sarah, go ahead and give it a go on connecting the clean energy to our local natural resources.
Yeah, sure. I mean, this is relevant on several scales. At the global scale, many of us at Clean Energy New Hampshire are sort of intrinsically motivated by wanting to decarbonize New Hampshire's economy and ultimately decarbonize our global economy. And when I think about preserving land and watersheds and the environment writ large, decarbonization of our economies is a really important piece of that. And so we can talk about the whole climate change thing if you wish, but there's the global side of why, for me at least, it really matters that we're switching to clean energy and we're really leaning into energy efficiency. It's just cleaner. The more local level piece, we are just this month launching a program called Soul Smart New Hampshire. We're partnering with a national partner and we are working with communities to proactively assess their solar zoning ordinances, which sounds really boring, but I think it's related to what you're talking about. I think we all want clean energy development in our communities because that is power for our residents that is locally controlled and much more stable than relying on the fluctuating prices of electricity that are influenced by natural gas availability and like cold snaps in the winter. Being able to produce some of our electricity locally is just really good for our households, our communities, etc. And so we want it, but there are ways that we want it and ways that we don't. We certainly don't want to be wiping out conserved lands to put up acres and acres and acres of solar. We need to all be in conversation about what our community goals are, what kind of solar we really want and need, and where the limits are on that. Many of us who are strong advocates in the clean energy space are also in this because we really, really value our New Hampshire landscape and access to green space and conservation. So I think there's a lot of value commonality between the folks in your community who are interested in developing clean energy and the folks in your community who are really focused on conservation and trails. And I think there's in some communities that those folks are talking to each other all the time, and in some communities they're just not. And I think we should be talking more. I think that we have more in common than not, and it's very much a both and. We need to be focused intensely on conservation and intensely on renewable energy generation and energy efficiency in order to achieve the kind of communities we all want to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of overlap and there's a lot of ways these two groups can kind of support each other to achieve those very common goals. So, all right, a couple more questions here.
But Frank's got a thought on that too.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Frank.
I just wanted to add on to what Sarah's saying on more of a local level is the town, Dublin, that I've been working with, where they early on in the process for their solar that they're hoping to put at the transfer station, they've included the Conservation Commission and other committees in town early on in the discussion to address any concerns, to get some resources from their regional planning commissions and Fish and Game and all of these organizations so that they can come to the discussion educated about how it might impact some of the local landscape and resources. So that's just an example of a town that's done that successfully.
Absolutely. I think it can be specific to a parcel as well as the whole community. So, so you need to always be aware of those implications for both, siting solar, siting clean energy, as well as all of the other natural resources that are are both on the, parcel level to town-wide. Awesome. Thanks so much.
The other Sarah Brock is actually Doug Cogan. He's our
Oh
Sullivan
yeah,
County
go ahead.
District Writer.
I would
And I can
that's
see
gonna
you about to speak, and maybe you're thinking of the Sunapee example, or maybe you're thinking of something else.
well, I was actually thinking of something else. There's also something going on through the regional planning commissions called the Resilient Communities Program that is primarily focused on transportation systems. But this again goes to kind of show the cross-cutting interests that we have between our groups. You know, with clean energy, we're trying to get to the source of the problem of decarbonizing our economy so that we don't have these tremendous rainstorms and flash floods that do such tremendous damage to our road infrastructure. So, in a sense, we're taking the long haul fight on that, but there are critical needs in the meantime to address choke points on roads, culverts that are having problems. That requires a pretty intimate understanding of watersheds and the natural resource base within your town and getting to know it better. So I've been working with some towns in Sullivan County that are part of this program, and we would like to see, as part of a resilient community, to maybe focus on electric vehicle charging systems as a way to help support a transition to a decarbonized economy. So again, that's sort of the longer term goal that we might help to support within a resilient transportation infrastructure. But it's also, again, critically understanding the natural resource base and the way water is flowing and what can be done to accommodate that. So it's one way, and I haven't really dealt directly with conservation committees in this particular project just yet, but I could certainly anticipate that overlap and joint support going forward.
All right, great point, Doug. Thank you. All right, so let's see. Here's an easy one. Can clean energy provide guidance for citizens of towns that lack energy committees, and how to get one established? So I'm pretty sure we can help you out with that, right, Sarah? For help establish.
Yeah, that's from Bill Coder. I can't remember what community you're from, Bill, but just reach out to us. More than happy. It's something we've done a lot of.
Awesome. Okay. Do you have a workshop slide that we could use instead of having develop slide sets on our own?
Yeah, that's from Dana. That's a really good question. I get asked this a lot, and are there templates? Can you just take something off the shelf and do a presentation? I wish I could say yes. The one thing I will say is that there's a small group of us on the team that are desperately trying to find ways to get the capacity to do what you're describing, which is put together some template material that would be easier to just pass out, because really it ought to not be that every little energy committee is reinventing the wheel every time they want to do a heat pump workshop. I will just say that we are a small team that's got our hands full with a lot of technical assistance, and we haven't been able to set a lot of time aside to develop those sorts of resources, but we're working on ways to do it. And one thing that we would like to see more of is energy committees coming together, and we're ready to support that so that we can do a bit of sharing. So if Plainfield did a really good session last year, can we get that template so that we can share it with the rest of you, developing a bit of a crowdsourced resource? And then we do have some projects coming down the line that, if they're funding and if that work happens, our team should have more direct capacity to be building on those starting points and making more of that kind of material available. We know that it would be helpful.
Excellent. Yeah, no, learning from each other goes a long way. I will
It really
definitely
does.
attest to that. So, can planting native plants under solar panels create conservation area for wildlife? And I think this is a great idea.
Yeah, we have again, Katrin Casper, who's our Seacoast circuit writer, isn't here, but if she was, she would be beaming. She calls this fuzz and buzz, and I'm not exactly sure where that term came from, but it makes me laugh. This is something that several solar installers in the state are really passionate about. It's something you can request as part of putting a solar installation in, and certainly when you put a ground-mounted solar array in place, typically what goes underneath it is vegetation, and you can plant anything there you want. And particularly for pollinators, that can be a really, really lovely way to have some conservation goals met at the same time. Typically, the large arrays will have a fence around them, so not so great for like four-legged wildlife, but really great for pollinators.
Okay, great. And here's another question about, sharing, experience and collaboration. And I think, maybe the best thing to do, we will include Sarah's contact information. And if you have information you want to share with other energy commissions, or you want to hear from other commissions about specific projects, I think Sarah will be able to connect you more directly to anybody else that's doing a similar project. So we've gotten through the chat. Is there anybody who would like to raise their hand and or just unmute and go ahead and ask your question directly? We have a few more minutes left. If you want to comment, or maybe even just tell us a little bit about what your town is doing that you're excited about. It's kind of quiet out there, so we'll give you another minute or so. I'll also.
I will say while folks are, Steve, do you have something?
Yeah, I'm wondering if you have any idea how your projects are going to be impacted by the changes at the EPA and of course the other federal agencies that like USDA that are involved in funding. I know it is early and we haven't seen all the ramifications yet, but have you heard anything through your networks about what one can expect?
Yeah. Well, a couple of things. One, we have been trying to track this closely, and it's a moving target. So you were absolutely right that it feels a little too early to tell. Our team has got a list of all of the clean energy related federal funds that we are aware of that are in the state and unspent, or had been awarded to the state and are somewhere in the process of being made into a program. And we've got contacts, and we're trying to track down whose money is flowing and whose money isn't. Almost across the board, everything is just kind of paused. It seems like the New Hampshire Department of Energy is just kind of holding on and not moving things forward right now, waiting guidance and trying to get things in order. And that goes for other agencies as well. So that's been a little bit unnerving. One of the things that we are doing in the next week or so, and honestly, Barb, I can share this with you and you can pass it along as well, is putting together some guidance for folks about what we think we're seeing and hearing, and to give you a little more context about the kinds of programs that New Hampshire has money designated to start and that they have sort of just stopped in the wake of all of this, so that if you see something that is concerning to you, and sort of tell me what you can do. I think that the most important thing right now is to make yourself aware of the kind of programs that are potentially at stake that we very much want to still happen in New Hampshire. These are dollars that were supposed to be coming to us and are, these are programs that were partway underway that are now sort of just paused. And we really need to make sure that our governor in particular knows that we care. We want these programs to happen. We don't want them to just disappear. And we hope that she's fighting for us to make sure that the money flows again. So that's the big one. For us as a technical assistance team, obviously, our number one piece of our strategic plan is to get money into New Hampshire, get resources into communities. So we're tracking it mainly because we want to make sure that your communities have access to the resources to do these projects. We certainly anticipate that the ready accessibility of grants to just cover the cost of projects at the local level may just not be as easy to access. So one of the things our team is doing this quarter is sort of rapidly skilling up in all the ways you can do a project without a grant. So we're really working to understand energy service contracting, financing mechanisms, all manner of ways that communities can still be working on projects. And we were providing technical assistance before the Inflation Reduction Act really started making out dollars, and towns will continue doing projects long after this. So federal funding was always going to come and go. We will find ways to do projects. And of course, for our team specifically, our goal is to have circuit riders in every county and be able to provide the like intensive, very thorough technical assistance that we can provide in some regions to every region. We would need money to do that. And we were hopeful until the incoming administration that one of the things that we could do is use some of these big programs coming into New Hampshire to cover some of our staff time and make it possible to grow our reach. And some of that just may not be able to happen as quickly. But we are a staff of 7, and we're going to continue providing that incredible resource and work smarter, not harder, try to reach as many of you as we can, try to connect the network together, as Dana Lavoie was saying, to share resources among communities, because I know that you all feel a little bit isolated in your own little municipality, and there's so much we could be learning from each other. So there's some thoughts.
Right. Well, thank you. That's certainly encouraging, because I think, yeah, there's so much uncertainty right now. It's nice to know that your services are available and you're willing to connect and share that information. So there is one more question. I'm not sure this is so easy to answer, but why do you think the current administration is hostile to offshore wind? That may not be one that's easy to answer in the last minute or two, but we could follow up on that perhaps.
Sandra, I don't know the answer to that. If you were really curious, I could get you an answer probably, because the policy team on my staff is much more wise to some of this, but I'm not going to even try to speculate.
Yes, I hear that. Well, again, I think it's time to wrap up. If we've covered most of our questions here. Again, we're going to share this recording as well as some contact information. So if you do have more questions or want to get more of the resources from Clean Energy New Hampshire, you'll be able to do that in that follow-up email. I just want to let you know about a couple upcoming programs. The last 2 in our series, we're going to be working with New Hampshire DES staff on the next program, Thursday, March 27th, and that's New Hampshire's Climate Action Plan. There's staff's going to give an update on the Climate Action Plan and some opportunities for participation in that. And then the final program we're going to have is the intersection between climate change, clean energy, and community. That's going to be April 24th. I'll be sending the links to register to the next 2 programs in our follow-up email as well. So keep an eye out for that tomorrow. And again, I want to thank the Clean Energy New Hampshire Circuit Rider team for being here today, and Sarah and all the work that they do to kind of keep this really important work going throughout the state. And we're so glad we were able to partner with your organization on these first 2 programs, because I think there was a really great connection. So everybody have a great afternoon. Enjoy your day, and feel free to follow up with me or Sarah if you have any more questions. All right. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.